Two of the most visible weapons of war that people often think of, especially regarding Russia, are tanks and artillery. Artillery to soften up the enemy and keep them disorganized, and then tanks rolling in to break through the enemy lines and advance. In the war in Ukraine, armored assaults have declined greatly, with unarmored vehicles accounting for just about 30% of losses in the beginning of the war to now basically 90%. Several things can account for that, like running low on armored vehicles or shifting tactics due to FPV drones, but the one thing you'll always need is artillery. While FPV drones have taken the place of artillery in some ways, it's still nowhere near the sheer volume of artillery firing thousands of rounds every single day. So, with that in mind, we take a look at Russia's largest artillery storage base, one that dates back centuries, and that is in central Omsk. And we are able to get the most up-to-date information possible from the highest possible resolution imagery taken just 10 days ago. And again, a big thanks to HIMARS here for helping count through all these vehicles. Without his dedication, this probably wouldn't be possible. But first, real quick, our sponsor Ekster is back with a new redesign of the wallet that people already loved. Their Wallet Pro has ditched the plastic for a 100% recycled aluminum mechanism, and it's cloaked in a luxurious Italian Valletta leather. The original was slim, but it capped out early. The Wallet Pro slims down further, yet carries up to 14 cards and cash. To achieve that, they used a redefined, lining-free shape, which also gives it a tighter closing flap. Even the card's ejector is smoother, popping out cards with less effort than the slightly clunkier plastic original trigger. The first Ekster was a solid start, but the Wallet Pro really perfects it. It's still the slimmest leather smart wallet around, but it's now tougher, sleeker, and built to adapt. And if you've ever thought about buying one, or even just upgrading yours, right now is really a great time to buy it. And that's because right now they're having their spring sale offering 30% off. Then, combined with my code, you'll get up to 40% off. Click the link in the description and use my code, CovertCabal, to get that extra discount. Again, Ekster. Again, the 94th Arsenal is one of the oldest, and likely is the oldest, storage base in all of Russia. It dates back not just to the Cold War, but its outline is clearly visible in this 1930 map. And even this 1884 map I found labels the location as a gunpowder magazine. The fact that its location outside the city walls at the time is no surprise due to the numerous incidences of powder magazines exploding in those days. They could destroy nearly entire cities, and they constantly ranked on the tops of the largest non-nuclear explosions of all time. So you wanted to keep these things a little bit away from your city. And this site might date back even further than that, being that the Omsk fortress was built in 1716. However, the older maps I found though, like this 1829 one, or even back to 1786, don't extend out to that area. The US was well aware of this site, given its age, and flew a U-2 spy plane capturing this image in August 1957. They called the site the Omsk Ordnance and Ammunition Depot, but notes that the site has primarily become a military depot. Likely this became the case after World War II to store the surplus artillery pieces. Over the following years, the CIA kept close watch on the base, detailing every building and the number of pieces of equipment they saw. But as it states here, the satellite imagery of the mid-60s wasn't high enough resolution to make out what exactly they were. Here you can see a declassified image from 1966, and you can see just how hard it is to distinguish. Then we have a 20-year gap from the mid-80s, which is the most recent declassified imagery, to the rise of commercial satellite imagery in the mid-2000s. The base's already long-established history as an artillery storage base with plenty of extra space made it the perfect site for Russia to store the thousands of extra artillery they no longer needed and couldn't afford after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And this base is by far the largest for self-propelled artillery in Russia. In our last full count of every base, the 94th held over 60% of all SPGs, so by far it's the most important to monitor. And as you can see, everywhere you look, the stockpiles have just dropped. Huge fields of vehicles have now thinned out and been picked through. As for specific systems, the two S7s are almost completely gone, down to just 34 compared to a pre-war 216. Now, you can see that there are clearly more than 34 here. The 2S7 is unique. Being that it's the largest of all Russian self-propelled artillery systems, you can much easier make out the barrel and its condition, so it's easier for us to judge them accordingly. That's not the case for the others though. It's virtually impossible to tell the condition of any of these. It's much harder than tanks even. We're not counting empty hulls just thrown out in the woods, or those two S7s that we can see missing barrels, but besides that, it's safe to assume that for the most part the vehicles being removed first are those in the best condition. Therefore, an increasing percentage of those remaining are likely to be in the worst shape, with some even past the point of salvaging. But to sum it all up, this base has gone from 2,494 to just 1,196. As you can see, this is only for self-propelled systems. There are also a few towed artillery and mortars, but not really enough to bother mentioning. The huge number of mortars were located in a field in the northwest section, and they all disappeared by mid-2023. And then in the latest imagery, we see that they're building 2 new maintenance or storage buildings in their place. But back to SPGs, here are those all graphed out. It's important to note that this graph doesn't go down to 0. However, again, a huge percentage of those pieces remaining may possibly be beyond saving, such as those 2 S7s where we can tell roughly 60% are missing the most important part of artillery, the barrel. If that number was the same for all types, which is probably a stretch, you could pretty much imagine this graph went to 0. And we're likely seeing proof of this with Russia using North Korean artillery systems recently. So, despite the large number apparently remaining, it's likely they're reaching the end.